Hey everyone, this is Mary Beth McAndrews from Dread Central, and I am here today with Josh Wallace, the director and co-writer of the new film Keeping Company, and Devin and Josh, co-writer and actor in the film Keeping Company, which is available to watch now. Hello, both of you. How are you?
Hi.
We're doing great. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
So I love this movie. It is so funny and so dark, and I love a really good pitch black comedy. And you guys surprised me quite a few times with how dark you were willing to go. So very much appreciate that. But Josh, I want to now hear from you first. Where did this idea come from? Since the two of you wrote it together, I guess who came up with this idea first?
I think Devin had, it was just this obscure, it was like almost like a TV idea you were talking, or it's not even like a TV, it was like a short or something.
It was like an adult swim. It was like an adult swim idea.
Yeah. It was like, it was already really weird. And then we broadened it, made it a little bit more commercial in what it was, but kind of where we started from was two friends get kidnapped, and that was kind of our story. They get kidnapped by some psycho type person, and they all become friends. And it was very broad buddy comedy at the time. Like the first 4 or 5 drafts Devin and I wrote was just this broad studio buddy comedy, because that's kind of the world we came up through. But as we were writing it, Devin and I kind of like those dark themes just kept arising for some reason. And Devin and I finally had a chat one day, sat down, and we're like, let's just play into it. Let's just lean into those themes and actually say what we want to say. And if we're going to make this, why not take those big swings and do something different? And I think that's kind of what you said earlier, the movie can surprise you. I think it's just because we decided to take those bigger choices and try and say something with the movie. And it's also just silly. It's silly. It is silly still.
But serial killer comedy, I've decided, is one of my new favorite subgenres of horror comedy, or like, I'm not sure if it's horror, if it's comedy, but I find I have very much gravitated toward these movies. So it's great.
Interesting.
I know, it's interesting.
Love it. And that's so good.
Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, it's just good. We found our niche. Like we found our yeah.
And then, Devin, how did the two of you meet?
Yeah, so Josh and I were both assistants for like studio level writers and directors. This was like back around 2014, 2015. And we were just a couple of assistants, and Josh's boss had written the movie that my boss was directing. It was a studio comedy, broad buddy comedy. And so Josh and I just started working together in the process of producing that movie, because in Hollywood, assistants are like, every assistant talks to each other. Every assistant is like kind of like there is that like camaraderie of like, hey, we're in this shit together a little bit. And so Josh and I going through this process of producing this movie that our bosses were working on, we were like, hey, we should, like, we just started becoming friends, but we were like, we should start writing together, like we have very similar sensibilities. And so we just started writing together, and we wrote for about 3 years before we even came up with Keeping Company, I think.
Wow. What was the first thing you guys wrote together?
What was the first thing we wrote together? I think it was like a pilot.
Yeah, it was a TV pilot. It was about.
Was it Anchored? Was that what it was?
No. It was the house sitting. It was about house sitting.
Oh,
about a guy who was going from house to house sitting, and that's kind of how he was getting by. And a huge success, as you can obviously you already know about house sitting on HBO Max.
That's my favorite. Oh my god, my favorite. That's you guys.
Yeah, that's us. Here we are 8 seasons later, and
here we are 8 seasons later and filthy rich. One thing that I'll say is that that was the first thing we wrote together, and we wrote it with the intention to produce it. We were like, because we had already individually been making short form content and sketches for years up until that point, and we started writing together, and we were like, oh, we should like we need to make something bigger that showcases what we're capable of. And it was like a half-hour pilot that we were going to produce that we just never ended up doing because money and time and all of that stuff that gets in the way. But Josh and I definitely, like, we started working together very much with that same spirit of like the desire and drive to like eventually be producing what we're making on our own. And it finally came to a point 3 years later when we were like, we're doing this finally, and we did it with Keeping Company. So
amazing. So the two of you, were you more in the comedy world than the horror world when it came to like creating stuff, not just watching stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for me, definitely Josh, I don't know if you felt like, I feel like your stuff, your early stuff, like definitely like wasn't like horror, but definitely had like always had elements of genre in some sense, or like blended a little bit more.
Yeah, we were always
mine.
doing some kind of genre blend. Like Devin and I were making, like sketches for Funny or Die.
Yeah.
And I know in my realm of it, like it was always leaning toward, there's always some kind of genre blend. So we would do like spoofs of like Saw or whoa.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
No.
I was like, hold it in. And I was like, I can only imagine the weird things my face was just doing on camera. So so sorry to interrupt you.
It was cool. It looked cool. It looked really cool
Wow,
on our end. Yeah. You had like a camera shake, but like it looked intense.
It's actually, this is host now. I'm actually now possessed, and we are in a new movie. Anyway, producing shorts for Funny or Die.
Yeah. And yeah, so there was some kind of like foray into it a little bit early on, but Devin and I are certainly strongly rooted in comedy.
Cool. And so I have talked to Devin about this, but Josh, are you a big horror fan outside of it? Did you watch horror movies growing up? Like, is that your thing?
Oh yeah. Like if not comedy, it's horror. Like that was always kind of the thing. And it's just like it's I don't know what it was. Like I think it's the adrenaline rush that you get from horror that I just gravitated towards as a kid, and then getting into college and film school, just opening up your eyes to like so many different obscure horrors and like weird, like I think me and my friends stumbled upon Cannibal Holocaust just in our school library, and it was like such a weird, which is a weird movie to kind of like stumble across, to find. Usually someone's telling you about that movie, and we just found it. We're like, what's this? It's got a weird name. And then but that like sparks that kind of love of just like cult type movies, that like, wow, this stuff just exists out there for anybody to find. And maybe weirdly, 10 or so years later, informing another a similar movie.
Also, the fact that really adds to the Cannibal Holocaust snuff film vibes, though. Like, you just found it in a library, in a shelf, and you watched it. Is this real? Is this fake? Like, what is this?
I can't believe you found that in your school library. That's amazing.
It's so weird. I mean, also what was really interesting is learning that we can rent DVDs from the school library. Like that was also like, what? We could have done this the whole time. So that's, go to your library. That's your libraries have a lot of.
It's one of the best places to get movies, I've discovered.
It's true.
But Josh, do you remember what your first horror movie was?
I can't, like, I've told this story a couple of different times. I can't remember exactly what my family loves horror as well. So it was always there, but my biggest like first memory with horror was my dad sitting us down to watch the Blair Witch Project. On the DVD, like on the featurettes of the DVD for the Blair Witch Project, there's a mockumentary, another fake documentary thing about the making of the Blair Witch, like saying like, hey, this is real, we found this weird tape and stuff, like, and it goes like the story of finding the tape for the Blair Witch. And so he made us watch that first, which convinced me and my brothers that what we were about to watch is actually real footage. And so then we watched Blair Witch, and truly the most horrifying movie watching experience ever of my life. Like it was,
How old are
very
you?
impactful.
How old
I
were
can't,
you?
I can't remember how old. I must have been like 10 or 11 or something like that.
Well, that's when I saw
That's
it.
amazing.
And I always tell people when they bring up Blair Witch, I grew up near Burkittsville, Maryland. So when I watched it for the first
Oh.
time, I was like, nope, absolutely not. I'm never leaving my house again. Like, I used to go to Girl Scout camp in the woods of Maryland, and I was like, it's over. Like, it's over for me. It's going to happen to me. So that movie is terrifying. So
Yeah, it's like just the idea that someone could stand in a corner and that be one of the most horrifying images.
Oh, it's scary.
It's so effective, and it's so simple.
it is so simple. And then Devin, what was your first horror movie?
My very first horror movie was probably oh God, what my very first might have been Silence of the Lambs, which I think I mentioned when I talked to you. I think Silence of the Lambs was one of the first, and weirdly also uh Scream and Children of the Corn were up there as early horror films. And I remember watching one of my aunts sat me down. It was just me and her. No one else was home. She was babysitting me. I think I was like 7 or 8. And we sat down to watch Scream like late at night. And I remember being terrified. And it's funny because like that movie's a satire. It's so fun. It's so funny. It's not even, I mean, it has its jump scare moments and whatnot. But as a kid, I was like, the nuance of like the satire and all that washed right over me. And to me, it was just a slasher. And it was, that scared the hell out of me.
Oh, I saw that also at a very young age and did not realize it was funny either. So
yeah,
shaped me. But going back to Keeping Company, you have an incredible cast, but I do have to say, Ahmed Barucha as Noah is the sweetest boy on the planet. And I just want to hear more about how you found him to be in the film as Noah, my sweet baby boy.
Yeah, Ahmed is so good in the movie. He's one of my favorite performances in the movie. I think everybody loves him so much because he is like the only somewhat glimmer of hope in that film. But he's the only like somewhat good person in the movie. Anyways, we had known Ahmed for years before Keeping Company because Ahmed is big in the stand-up world and sketch comedy world. His sketch comedy group, Dead Kevin, was doing like Comedy Central stuff, and they were great back in the day. I don't know if they're still doing stuff, but I had worked with him on a sketch through Funny or Die, like back in 2013. Josh, I think you knew him through stand-up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had just known him and loosely worked with him. And when we were writing this movie and we were starting to write this character, we were just like instantly we're like, you know who this reminds me of? Ahmed Barucha, because he is so nice. He is truly in real life the sweetest person. He has the best laugh, like it's infectious, it's incredible. He's just so nice and such a good person. And Noah, he basically is playing a heightened version of himself, and we just really, dude, we got to get Ahmed to play this role. And with it being such a like low budget indie film, it's like you got to call up on your friends and the things that are going to require the most commitment and time. It's like we got to like lean into like our friendships here, and like not try to like go for like just for a big name or whatever. That's probably gonna like you don't want to like. It's just and it's just easier and better to be working with your friends. You know what I mean? And so we just immediately were like, we got to get Ahmed, and we sent him the script, and he said yes immediately, which was great.
Yeah, he's also like, I mean, also just in terms of being the sweetest person ever, like on set when we had to do, there's one moment in the movie where Noah actually, has to get a little bit more riled up and angry and stuff like that in one pivotal scene, and getting Ahmed to do that was the hardest part, was getting Ahmed to get angry. Like even when he was angry, he was being cute, and it was like, you got to be angry, Ahmed. Like he was still doing like little jokes and stuff like that, and it's like I mean, again, you adore him, but that is just who he is, and which is so heartwarming to know.
I love to know that. That makes me very happy to know that Noah
Yeah.
is just like that in real life.
Yeah.
And then, so my final question for the two of you is, if you had to schedule your perfect double feature with Keeping Company, what movie would you pair it with? And then, Josh, I'm going to start with you for your pick.
I'm not sure. Like, I don't know if this is too like, to me, it would be it would be either, or I guess it'd be two things. It'd be a Coen Brothers film. So it would either be like, but maybe that's the wrong move, because maybe it just end up being too similar. In terms, like, this might pair well with like a Psycho or like an older like Hollywood kind of thriller. But I mean, it would be cool to play this with like, Burn After Reading, or Sam Raimi's Simple Plan. Would be another fun one. But just trying to get into like characters that are getting in over their head, at which Coen Brothers are the masters at.
Devin, what about you?
Yeah, I think I would go with something that's probably something like They Live or Sorry to Bother You, which are satires, as Josh mentioned, like what he mentioned is great pairings for what, like, because those are inspirations of ours for this film, and then the other inspirations for our film were like the social satires of like the Reagan era and stuff like. So it's like, it feels like it would pair well with like a very like offbeat satire that's like kind of like just hitting you over the head with what it's trying to say, so something like They Live, or something like Sorry to Bother You, feels like it would be fun to play alongside Keeping Company.
Amazing. And just to that point of you saying, not knocking over the head, but love that the insurance company is called Cast Insurance at the Pyramid. Just like chef's kiss, incredible, love it. It's just the best idea. So thank you for that.
I'm so happy you think so.
But Josh and Devin, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about Keeping Company. Everybody, Keeping Company is out now, so please check it out.